In the early hours of October 4, 1957, a small, metallic sphere pierced the night sky over the Soviet Union, emitting a simple series of beeps that would reverberate across the world. It was not a plane, nor a missile, nor a test of conventional weaponry. It was Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite to orbit Earth, and with its launch, a new era had begun, an era of technological ambition, international rivalry, and a profound reshaping of global politics. For the first time, humanity had reached beyond the familiar confines of the planet, and the shock waves of that achievement rippled across continents, stirring fear, wonder, and an urgent need to compete. The United States, the Soviet Union, and the rest of the world suddenly understood that the sky was no longer a limit, it was a battleground. The launch of Sputnik was far more than a technical achievement, it was a strategic message. The Soviet leadership, aware of the geopolitical tension with the United States, understood the symbolic weight of orbiting a satellite before their rivals. It was a declaration: the USSR possessed the capability to project power in ways previously unimaginable, not only in space but potentially with missile technology. The beeping signals transmitted from Sputnik were not just data, they were proof of Soviet scientific and industrial capacity. The American public, initially excited by the novelty, quickly succumbed to anxiety as the realization dawned that the Cold War had entered a new, high-tech dimension. The implications were immense, touching national security, education, and technological investment. In Washington, the shock of Sputnik prompted immediate action. Policymakers, scientists, and military strategists convened to assess the Soviet capabilities and their potential threats. The event exposed the weaknesses in American scientific infrastructure, particularly in missile and satellite technology. The response was swift, funding for research and development skyrocketed, and the government established institutions designed to consolidate expertise and accelerate progress. Among the most significant initiatives was the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, created in 1958 to coordinate the United States civilian space program and ensure that America would not fall behind in this rapidly emerging arena. Sputnik had sparked not just fear but determination, a national drive to achieve technological supremacy. The space race quickly became a symbol of ideological competition as much as technological prowess. The United States framed its efforts as a demonstration of the advantages of democracy, innovation, and capitalism, contrasting itself against the centralized, secretive Soviet model. The Soviet Union, meanwhile, portrayed its achievements as evidence of socialism's scientific and organizational strength. Every launch, every success, every failure was magnified into a political statement. Satellites were no longer mere machines, they were embodiments of national prestige, proof of a country's ability to harness knowledge, resources, and ambition to achieve the extraordinary. In this sense, the race was as much about winning hearts and minds on Earth as it was about orbiting satellites in space. Behind the headlines, the technical challenges were enormous. Sending an object into orbit required precise calculations of velocity, trajectory, and timing. Engineers had to overcome the limitations of rocket propulsion, the stresses of atmospheric friction, and the hazards of weight and balance. Sputnik 1, though relatively simple by modern standards, a 184-pound metal sphere equipped with 4 antennas, represented decades of theoretical physics, meticulous engineering, and daring innovation. It was a tangible result of scientific dedication, a testament to the ability of engineers and mathematicians to transform theory into practice. Its success inspired both awe and panic, demonstrating that what had once seemed the realm of science fiction was now a matter of national capability. Public reaction was immediate and intense. Across the United States, Families huddled around radios to hear the faint, regular beeps transmitted from orbit. Newspapers ran dramatic headlines warning of Soviet superiority, while schools began emphasizing science and mathematics education to prepare the next generation of engineers and physicists. The launch also prompted widespread debate about military preparedness, as the technology used to place a satellite in orbit could be adapted for intercontinental ballistic missiles. Politicians seized the moment, promising to restore American technological leadership, while ordinary citizens felt the tangible urgency of a world where the next frontier was no longer distant but within reach of their most advanced rivals. Soviet leaders, meanwhile, recognized that Sputnik was only the beginning. The launch served as a prelude to increasingly ambitious projects, from heavier satellites capable of carrying scientific instruments to the eventual goal of manned spaceflight. Every success was meticulously staged to demonstrate Soviet superiority, both domestically and internationally. Propaganda efforts emphasized the technological skill of Soviet engineers and the visionary leadership of figures like Sergei Korolev, the chief architect of the Soviet space program. Behind the public celebrations, however, the program faced enormous logistical and technical hurdles, requiring the mobilization of thousands of scientists, engineers, and laborers under intense political pressure. The stakes were clear: each launch could cement global prestige or expose vulnerability. The United States responded with urgency, recognizing that catching up would require more than incremental improvements. The government launched ambitious research initiatives, recruited top scientists, and invested in new technologies that could rival Soviet achievements. Programs like Explorer 1, the first successful American satellite launched in 1958, demonstrated the country's determination to assert itself in space. Military applications were also emphasized, with missile development closely linked to space exploration. The space race was no longer a distant ambition, it was a visible, measurable competition, where every success or failure had political, scientific, and psychological consequences. Cultural responses to the space race were equally profound. Literature, film, and art reflected both wonder and anxiety about humanity's new place in the cosmos. Children dreamed of becoming astronauts, scientists speculated about life beyond Earth. Governments funded educational initiatives to cultivate the next generation of engineers, mathematicians, and physicists, realizing that human capital was as critical as rockets or satellites. The excitement of exploration merged with the tension of rivalry, creating a climate where space was a canvas for ambition, fear, and imagination. Sputnik's beeps had ignited not only scientific ambition but also a cultural awakening, a recognition that the universe was within reach and that humanity's place in it would be contested and redefined. In this early phase, the space race was defined by uncertainty. Success was neither guaranteed nor predictable, and failure could carry immense consequences for national morale. Rockets exploded on launch pads, satellites malfunctioned, and ambitious projects were abandoned after repeated setbacks. Yet each attempt, whether successful or not, contributed to a growing body of knowledge. Engineers refined propulsion systems, perfected guidance mechanisms, and developed materials capable of withstanding the harsh conditions of space. Each failure offered lessons that informed subsequent launches, creating a dynamic feedback loop of experimentation, analysis, and improvement. In this sense, the race was not just about prestige, it was about learning to navigate the unknown, turning theoretical possibility into practical achievement. By the end of the 1950s, the world had entered a new epoch. The launch of Sputnik 1 was more than a technological milestone, it was a catalyst for an intense, high-stakes competition that would drive innovation, political maneuvering, and public fascination for decades. The space race had transformed the Cold War into a contest not only of armies and ideologies but also of knowledge, ambition, and imagination. For the first time, humanity faced the prospect of reaching beyond the planet with purpose and precision, and nations understood that the mastery of space would determine not only scientific leadership but global influence. The stage was set for a series of breathtaking achievements, daring missions, and historic confrontations that would define an era. In retrospect, the launch of Sputnik 1 was deceptively simple, a small metal sphere orbiting a planet, but its significance was monumental. It marked the ignition of the space race, a competition that fused science, politics, and culture into a dramatic saga of ambition and rivalry. It demonstrated that human ingenuity, backed by national resources and political will, could overcome previously unimaginable barriers. Above all, it reminded the world that exploration was no longer optional but inevitable, and that the heavens themselves had become a new frontier in the struggle for dominance and discovery. The story of the space race had begun, and with it, humanity embarked on a journey that would challenge assumptions, redefine possibilities, and forever alter our understanding of what it meant to reach for the stars. As the world watched the Sputnik signals fade into orbit, the space race accelerated with unprecedented intensity. The Soviet Union, emboldened by its success, moved quickly to expand its reach into space. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock, translating theoretical designs into tangible missions. Within months, they launched Sputnik 2, carrying the small dog Laika, a living being sent into orbit for the first time in history. The mission captivated the globe, some hailed it as a scientific triumph, others decried the ethical implications of sending an animal into the unknown. Nevertheless, it reinforced the Soviet image as the leader in space exploration, demonstrating that their ambitions extended far beyond mere satellites. The stakes were higher than ever. This was no longer just a technical competition, it was a demonstration of national will and ideological superiority. The United States responded with urgency, scrambling to close the technological gap exposed by Soviet accomplishments. The American public demanded action, spurred by media coverage that highlighted the perceived vulnerability of the nation. In response, the U.S. government launched Project Vanguard and Explorer programs, aiming to place satellites into orbit and assert American capabilities. Initial failures, including a rocket that exploded shortly after launch, sparked public embarrassment and political scrutiny. Yet these setbacks became catalysts for rapid innovation, forcing engineers to refine designs, improve materials, and develop more precise guidance systems. Each failure highlighted the immense challenges of spaceflight, but also underscored the determination of a nation unwilling to yield leadership to a geopolitical rival. Amid these efforts, the Cold War context loomed large. Space was no longer a distant frontier, it was a strategic theater where missiles and satellites could serve as symbols of power and deterrence. Both superpowers recognized that advances in rocketry and orbital mechanics had direct military applications. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, capable of delivering nuclear payloads, were inherently linked to satellite technology. The success of a satellite launch could signal a nation's ability to strike from afar, raising stakes and tension on an unprecedented scale. Governments poured billions into research, recruited top scientific minds, and created institutions that could sustain long-term programs. Every orbital insertion became a demonstration of technological prowess and strategic capability. The human element of the race soon captured global imagination. In the early 1960s, the focus shifted from machines to people. The Soviet Union trained cosmonauts rigorously, preparing them for missions that would carry humans into space for the first time. Yuri Gagarin's historic flight on April 12, 1961, aboard Vostok 1 marked a turning point. For 108 minutes, Gagarin orbited the Earth, a living testament to Soviet engineering, endurance, and audacity. His triumphant return was broadcast worldwide, earning admiration, envy, and concern. The United States, already accelerating its astronaut training and Mercury program, saw Gagarin's flight as both inspiration and provocation. If one nation had sent a human beyond the atmosphere, the other could not remain idle. NASA, still in its formative years, faced immense pressure to respond. The Mercury program aimed to develop the capability to put a human into orbit safely. Engineers and astronauts worked under relentless timelines, testing spacecraft, life support systems, and re-entry procedures. Every test, from unmanned launches to suborbital flights, was scrutinized for safety and reliability. Public attention was intense, with each success and failure magnified by the lens of international rivalry. While the technical challenges were formidable, the political and psychological pressures were equally demanding. Every mission had to succeed not only for science but for national pride, to prove that democracy and innovation could compete with centralized Soviet planning. The competition extended to spacewalks, orbital maneuvers, and extended missions. The Soviet Union continued to achieve milestones, launching the first multi-orbit spacecraft and performing the first extravehicular activities. Each Soviet breakthrough was a spur for American programs, which adjusted strategies, increased funding, and accelerated training. The dynamic interplay between the two superpowers created a feedback loop of innovation. Every achievement forced the rival to advance further, faster, and with greater precision. Engineering teams across the globe were pushed to the edge of human and technical capability, developing technologies that would later become the foundation for satellites, communication networks, and even human habitation in space. Behind the scenes, secrecy and intelligence played critical roles. Both nations attempted to monitor each other's progress through reconnaissance, satellite tracking, and espionage. Understanding the opponent's capabilities allowed planners to anticipate launches, assess missile ranges, and evaluate technological strengths. Yet much remained hidden, and much was exaggerated. Propaganda amplified successes and downplayed failures, creating a climate in which perception was as important as reality. Every orbital insertion, every press release, every announcement of a cosmonaut or astronaut flight carried layers of political and psychological significance, shaping global opinion and influencing diplomatic negotiations. Scientific research thrived amid the competition. Early satellites provided invaluable data about Earth's atmosphere, radiation belts, and cosmic phenomena. Instruments measured magnetic fields, cosmic rays, and solar winds, yielding insights that were impossible to obtain from the planet's surface. The dual purpose of these missions, advancing knowledge and signaling technological dominance, gave scientists unprecedented opportunities, but also placed them under intense scrutiny. Successes were celebrated as national achievements, failures were political embarrassments, and every experiment contributed to a rapidly expanding understanding of space. The line between pure science and geopolitical strategy became increasingly blurred. The broader implications of the space race extended beyond politics and technology. Education systems were transformed, with an emphasis on mathematics, physics, and engineering to cultivate the next generation of scientists and explorers. Universities received funding for research, laboratories expanded, and young minds were inspired to pursue careers in aerospace and related fields. Popular culture reflected the era's fascination with space. Films, books, and television programs depicted astronauts, interstellar travel, and encounters with the unknown. This cultural shift was intertwined with the geopolitical competition, creating a climate in which space was both a scientific frontier and a stage for ideological demonstration. As the 1960s progressed, the space race became increasingly ambitious. Both nations set their sights on manned lunar missions, long-duration flights, and complex orbital operations. Each step required innovation in propulsion, life support, navigation, and safety systems. Missions became progressively more complex, testing endurance, precision, and coordination. The psychological challenges were immense, as astronauts and cosmonauts endured isolation, high-stress conditions, and life-threatening environments. Every mission pushed human capacity to new limits, demonstrating resilience, courage, and ingenuity. The achievements of these pioneers were emblematic of a broader human aspiration, to explore, understand, and master the environment beyond Earth. The battle for the heavens was no longer hypothetical, it had tangible outcomes on policy, diplomacy, and national identity. Each nation's progress shaped perceptions of strength, technological capability, and leadership. Space became a theater in which science, ideology, and ambition converged, with every milestone influencing global dynamics. The world watched as rockets soared, satellites transmitted data, and humans orbited Earth, recognizing that control of the final frontier carried consequences far beyond the atmosphere. The race was not simply about exploration, it was about asserting influence, demonstrating capability, and shaping the future of international relations. By the mid-1960s, it was clear that the space race was a defining feature of the Cold War era. Early victories, technological innovations, and historic flights had laid the foundation for future exploration, while simultaneously intensifying competition and geopolitical tension. The achievements of the Soviet Union and the United States inspired generations of scientists, engineers, and dreamers, while also highlighting the stakes of failure. In this arena, success demanded not only intellect and ingenuity but also determination, strategic vision, and a willingness to embrace risk. The stage was set for the next dramatic phase, the quest to reach the moon, a challenge that would define the ambitions and legacies of nations, and ultimately reshape humanity's relationship with the cosmos. By the mid-1960s, the space race had evolved from satellite launches and orbital flights into a contest with ever greater stakes, the conquest of the moon. Both superpowers understood that landing a human on the lunar surface would be the ultimate symbol of technological and ideological supremacy. The Soviet Union had already achieved a series of firsts: first artificial satellite, first living creature in orbit, first human in space, but the moon represented uncharted territory, a challenge that combined engineering, science, and human endurance on a scale never attempted before. The urgency to achieve this milestone was magnified by political pressure, global attention, and a pervasive sense that space exploration was now a decisive measure of national capability. In the United States, President John F. Kennedy captured this urgency with his historic address to Congress in 1961, declaring that America would commit to landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth before the decade was out. The speech galvanized the nation, setting an ambitious timeline that demanded unprecedented coordination between government, industry, and academia. NASA, already engaged in Mercury and Gemini programs, immediately accelerated development of the Saturn V rocket, lunar modules, and guidance systems. Every component had to function flawlessly, the margin for error in a lunar mission was almost non-existent. Engineers faced immense challenges: propulsion powerful enough to escape Earth's gravity, navigation systems capable of precise lunar landing, and life support mechanisms to sustain astronauts in an environment hostile to human life. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union intensified its efforts, determined not to relinquish leadership. Sergei Korolev and his team worked on the N-1 rocket, a colossal vehicle designed to carry cosmonauts to the moon. Although progress was slower than in earlier projects, the USSR demonstrated extraordinary ambition, conducting a series of unmanned missions to test components, trajectories, and lunar landing procedures. In parallel, the Soviets achieved the first soft landing of a robotic probe on the Moon with Luna 9 in 1966, sending images of the lunar surface that both thrilled the world and signaled their capabilities. Each mission served a dual purpose, advancing scientific knowledge while also maintaining the perception that the Soviet Union remained a formidable competitor in space. In the United States, the Gemini program became a crucial stepping stone toward lunar exploration. These missions tested long-duration spaceflight, extravehicular activities, and orbital rendezvous techniques essential for lunar travel. Astronauts practiced docking maneuvers in orbit, simulating the complex tasks required to transfer from a command module to a lunar lander. Gemini missions pushed human endurance and tested spacecraft systems under continuous operation. The data gathered informed the design of Apollo spacecraft, while the experiences of the astronauts provided invaluable insights into living and working in space. Each mission reinforced the understanding that success on the Moon would require precise execution, teamwork, and adaptability under pressure. The race to the Moon was not purely technical, it was a psychological and cultural struggle as well. Television broadcasts brought images of rockets, astronauts, and launch sites into homes around the world. Public interest surged, and each milestone was celebrated as a demonstration of national pride and ingenuity. In classrooms, children were inspired to study science and engineering. In laboratories, researchers pursued breakthroughs in materials, computing, and communications. Governments leveraged media coverage to shape perceptions, emphasizing competence and determination while downplaying setbacks. In this sense, the space race became a theater of visibility, where public perception and political narrative were almost as important as actual technical achievement. Amid these developments, both nations confronted the inherent risks of spaceflight. Tragic accidents reminded everyone that exploration was fraught with danger. Early test flights ended in explosions, while mechanical failures threatened missions that had taken years to prepare. The deaths of astronauts and cosmonauts during training or launch operations underscored the human cost of ambition. Yet, these tragedies did not deter efforts, they reinforced the necessity for meticulous planning, redundancy, and innovation. Every setback yielded lessons that informed subsequent missions, and every success inspired renewed commitment to the goal of reaching the Moon. The technological innovations of this era were staggering. Rockets became more powerful and precise, capable of lifting enormous payloads and adjusting trajectory mid-flight. Guidance systems integrated computers for the first time, calculating trajectories with a speed and accuracy that had previously been impossible. Lunar modules were designed to operate independently in the vacuum of space, with systems capable of life support, propulsion, and navigation. Even small components, spacesuits, oxygen regulators, heat shields were redesigned to withstand the rigors of space and lunar environments. These innovations were not incremental, they represented leaps in engineering and science, many of which would later have applications on Earth in medicine, telecommunications, and computing. International attention intensified as both superpowers advanced their lunar programs. Every launch was monitored with satellites, radar, and radio telescopes. Nations across Europe, Asia, and the Americas followed progress closely, aware that the Moon landing would have implications beyond space. It would signal which nation was most capable of scientific leadership, industrial organization, and strategic innovation. Diplomats, military strategists, and scientists alike understood that lunar success would shape alliances, influence negotiations, and establish global prestige. Space had become a domain in which technological capability directly translated into geopolitical influence. The culmination of these efforts was the Apollo program, a massive undertaking that integrated hundreds of contractors, thousands of engineers, and dozens of astronauts. Each mission involved meticulous planning, calculations of orbital insertion, lunar descent, surface operations, and return trajectory. Simulations, rehearsals, and contingency planning were exhaustive. The complexity was staggering, yet the program exemplified human ingenuity and organizational capacity. Apollo was not merely a space program, it was a statement of ambition, demonstrating that coordinated effort, scientific expertise, and political commitment could overcome challenges that had once seemed insurmountable. In the Soviet Union, progress continued in parallel, though secrecy often obscured the details. Cosmonauts trained for lunar operations, unmanned missions tested landing systems, and engineers refined rocket designs. Yet internal challenges, including technical setbacks and resource limitations, slowed progress relative to Apollo. Despite these obstacles, the USSR remained committed to the Moon, emphasizing achievements in unmanned exploration and maintaining a narrative of continued space leadership. The dual pressures of competition and national prestige drove every decision, with each mission carrying scientific, political, and symbolic weight. As the decade drew to a close, the race had transformed from a struggle for orbital dominance into a quest for human presence on another celestial body. The Moon represented the ultimate goal, a destination that combined technical challenge, strategic significance, and public imagination. Both nations understood that the first successful landing would resonate across the globe, influencing politics, culture, and scientific priorities for decades. The tension was palpable, the stakes monumental, and the world watched with anticipation as humanity prepared to step beyond Earth for the first time, propelled by ambition, rivalry, and the enduring drive to explore the unknown. By the late 1960s, the groundwork was complete. Rockets were capable, spacecraft were reliable, and astronauts had proven their resilience. Every launch, every simulation, every calculation had led to a moment of possibility, the chance to place humans on the Moon. The space race had evolved from an abstract competition into a tangible human endeavor, one that fused science, technology, politics, and culture. The Moon, once a distant point of light in the night sky, had become a destination, an objective that would test the limits of engineering, courage, and imagination. The world waited, knowing that whoever first succeeded would not only claim a milestone in space exploration but also secure a place in history. The summer of 1969 arrived with the world holding its breath. After nearly a decade of relentless competition, technological innovation, and human endurance, the culmination of the space race was within reach. The Apollo 11 mission, meticulously planned and executed, represented the pinnacle of American ambition. Every component from the Saturn V rocket to the lunar module, from mission control protocols to astronaut training had been tested, refined, and rehearsed countless times. For the first time, humanity was on the brink of stepping beyond Earth and setting foot on another celestial body. The tension was palpable, decades of preparation, triumphs, and setbacks had led to this singular moment. On July 16, 1969, the Saturn V thundered skyward from Kennedy Space Center, carrying astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins into orbit. Millions around the globe watched, captivated by the ascent of a machine that embodied human ingenuity, ambition, and perseverance. The launch was flawless, a testament to the countless hours of engineering, simulation, and coordination behind the scenes. As the rocket pierced the atmosphere, the world experienced a mixture of awe, anxiety, and exhilaration. Every second of the mission carried profound significance, not just as a technical achievement, but as a statement of national resolve and human potential. The journey to the moon was fraught with challenges. Lunar trajectories demanded precise calculations. Even a minor misstep could send the spacecraft off course or trap it in orbit indefinitely. Astronauts navigated complex maneuvers, monitored life support systems, and adjusted course with split-second precision. Meanwhile, Mission Control in Houston coordinated every move, balancing risk with opportunity, making rapid decisions that could mean life or death. The collaboration between astronauts and ground teams exemplified the extraordinary human effort required to explore space. It was a dance of intellect, discipline, and trust, with the vast emptiness of space as the backdrop. On July 20, the lunar module Eagle separated from the command module, descending toward the moon's surface. The landing site, carefully selected for safety and scientific value, presented unforeseen challenges. Armstrong and Aldrin navigated over craters and boulders, their pulse racing as they manually guided the module. The descent was tense, every movement critical. Then, finally, the module touched down. The Eagle has landed. Those words, broadcast worldwide, signaled a historic achievement. Humanity had arrived on the moon. Cheers erupted across nations, a shared acknowledgement of an unparalleled accomplishment. It was not merely an American triumph, it was a human milestone, proof that perseverance and ingenuity could overcome unimaginable obstacles. Armstrong's first step onto the lunar surface became an iconic moment. "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," he said, capturing the symbolic magnitude of the achievement. Aldrin soon joined him, exploring, photographing, and conducting experiments. The astronauts collected samples of lunar soil and rocks, deployed scientific instruments, and transmitted images and data back to Earth. Each action was meticulously planned, but the reality of standing on a lifeless world underscored the extraordinary human courage required. For the millions watching on television, it was a moment of wonder, inspiration, and reflection, a demonstration of what could be achieved when determination met skill. The moon landing had immediate political and cultural ramifications. For the United States, it was a vindication of years of investment, scientific endeavor, and international posturing. Politicians touted the achievement as proof of democratic ingenuity and national leadership. For the Soviet Union, it was a challenge to their ambitions, prompting reassessment of lunar strategies and a shift toward robotic exploration. The psychological impact on the global community was profound. Space was no longer an abstract frontier or a distant dream. Humans had arrived, tangible and triumphant. It marked a turning point, demonstrating that technological innovation could redefine the boundaries of possibility and inspire generations to imagine beyond their immediate environment. Scientific discoveries from the mission reshaped understanding of the moon. Samples revealed its geological history, composition, and the processes that shaped its surface. Instruments measured seismic activity, radiation levels, and solar wind particles, providing insights previously unattainable from Earth-based observation. These findings not only advanced planetary science but also laid the groundwork for future exploration of Mars and beyond. The practical applications of these discoveries extended to Earth as well, influencing materials science, navigation systems, and environmental monitoring. The Apollo program, while driven by political competition, ultimately expanded human knowledge in ways that transcended national boundaries. The impact of the moon landing on human imagination and culture was equally profound. Literature, art, music, and cinema were infused with themes of exploration, curiosity, and possibility. Educational initiatives emphasized STEM fields, inspiring students to pursue careers in science, engineering, and aerospace. Public fascination with space fueled debates about humanity's future, the ethics of exploration, and the potential for life beyond Earth. In classrooms and homes, children looked up at the night sky with renewed wonder, imagining themselves as future explorers. The moon, once an unreachable dot of light, became a tangible symbol of achievement and aspiration. While the United States celebrated its triumph, the Soviet Union continued pursuing ambitious programs. Cosmonauts and engineers focused on robotic missions, space stations, and lunar probes, learning from earlier setbacks while advancing new technologies. Luna 17 and subsequent missions demonstrated the USSR's capability in remote exploration, paving the way for innovations that would later inform orbital stations like Mir. The Soviet approach shifted toward sustainable long-duration missions and scientific experimentation in space, complementing the United States' focus on manned lunar exploration. In this way, the space race evolved, competition remained, but both nations contributed to expanding humanity's presence in orbit and beyond. The consequences of the space race extended beyond geopolitics. It reshaped industry, spurred technological innovation, and accelerated global communication networks. Satellite technology enabled real-time broadcasting, weather forecasting, and telecommunications. Rockets developed for space exploration influenced missile systems, cargo transport, and scientific instrumentation. The collaboration between government, universities, and private industry became a model for large-scale scientific projects. Even decades later, the technological and organizational frameworks established during the space race continued to influence aerospace, computing, and energy sectors worldwide. By the early 1970s, the era of Apollo moon landings had firmly established the United States as the first nation to place humans on another world, while the Soviet Union's achievements in robotic exploration and orbital programs maintained its status as a space superpower. Both nations had pushed the limits of technology, human endurance, and organizational coordination. They had demonstrated that the pursuit of knowledge, combined with ambition and resources, could produce extraordinary results. The space race had changed the world's perception of what humanity could achieve, transforming space from a distant dream into an attainable frontier. Ultimately, the space race left an enduring legacy. It demonstrated the power of competition to accelerate innovation, the importance of human courage in overcoming unprecedented challenges, and the value of international attention in shaping priorities and progress. It showed that exploration, whether driven by politics, ideology, or curiosity, could unite people in wonder, inspire generations, and expand the horizon of human capability. The moon landing, above all, was proof that even in an era of tension and rivalry, humanity could accomplish extraordinary feats, stepping beyond Earth to touch the stars, and forever altering our understanding of what was possible.